Hello, 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 hello. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am so excited to have you here. My name is Jacole Kitchen. I am the Director of Arts Engagement and In-House Casting at La Jolla Playhouse. And it is my great pleasure to be introducing the conversation that is about to happen. I have had the pleasure to be the steward of the relationship, the partnership between La Jolla Playhouse and Native Voices at the Autry for the last 5 years. And with the change of leadership over the last couple of years, with the pandemic happening, we are back. La Jolla Playhouse and Native Voices at the Autry is back for a whole new run. Especially excited, so excited to have DeLanna Studi at the helm. We'll get to that in just one moment. I would love to open our conversation today by acknowledging with La Jolla Playhouse. La Jolla Playhouse acknowledges the land on which our theater sits as the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. Today, the Kumeyaay people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the San Diego community. Their contributions to our region are tremendous, and we thank them for their stewardship. And now, I am so excited to be able to bring you Stories That Matter, Native Women in Theater. And to kick this off, I would first like to bring in Artistic Director of Native Voices at the Autry, DeLanna Studi, who will be the moderator of our conversation today. And please help me welcome Jennifer Bobiwash and Courtney Elkin Mohler. Welcome, ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here.
Wado Jacole, this is so wonderful. What a joy to be here with all these fabulous females and women warriors. So everyone, I'm DeLanna Studi. I'm a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation from Oklahoma, and I'm the Artistic Director of Native Voices. And I'm thrilled to introduce these fine women that you see on the screen with me. First off, we have Courtney Elkin Mohler. She is the Associate Professor of Theater and Associate Dean for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access in Jordan College of the Arts at Butler University. And as a stage director and dramaturg, Mohler is dedicated to supporting new work by Native American playwrights. Her co-authored book, Critical Companion to Native American and First Nations Theater and Performance, Indigenous Spaces, was published in 2020 by Methuen Drama. Courtney is one of our all-time favorite dramaturgs. You will see her name listed on several projects with Native Voices, and I'm so thrilled to be here. So welcome, Courtney. And we also have Jennifer Bobiwash. Jennifer Bobiwash is an actor, storyteller, and digital content creator based in Los Angeles. She has been the co-lead artist of Native Voices at the Autry, which is the nation's only Native American equity theater company, where she has worked in all facets of production, settling on acting and playwriting. Jennifer is a contributor to LA Female Playwrights Initiative, and she uses new media to comment and educate about cultural appropriation, language, and pop culture and how it relates to Indigenous identity. Hi, Jennifer, welcome. And so I'm going to go ahead and get this party started. I know we're talking about stories that matter and Native women in the theater. So I think the first question I would always like to ask is, what drew you to the theater? What made this your passion? How did you become involved?
I was in LA, and literally I was at the Autry, and you're there to see some other show, and you get welcomed in. You're like, hey, are you an actor? What do you do? Do you do theater? Are you Native? And that's how it really started in Los Angeles. But overall, I've just always been writing. I had a big, couple binders just full of just writing, and so for me, that personal writing was important.
Thank you, DeLanna and Jennifer. Haku Pitap, Courtney Elkin Mohler, Kakti Nali, Santa Walla Walla. Hello, my name is Courtney Elkin Mohler, and I come from Santa Barbara, California. I'm so grateful to be here. I totally stan the La Jolla Playhouse, and everybody knows I stan Native Voices at the Autry. So I'm very excited to be with you all tonight. Stories were very important in my family growing up. My grandmother loved to tell stories, particularly of her understanding of our ancestry, her sort of bizarre fascination and romanticization, particularly of the Spanish in Santa Barbara. And I was a very dramatic child. And so my parents wanted to channel that in a way that would be productive. So I began theater at 6. But I did all of the kind of Eurocentric fairy tale, really patriarchal kinds of theater that is introduced to 6-year-olds in the United States, and particularly in the 1980s, until I got to UCLA as a theater major in 1998. I know I'm aging myself, but age is great. So I was so fortunate because I always knew that I had Native ancestry and that it was a really important part of my story. And I knew I loved theater, but I had no idea that there was such a thing as Native American theater at all until I got to UCLA and had the pleasure of working, learning from Hene Gigoma, who is Kiowa, Delaware, and really like a central early playwright in the field of Native theater, and became kind of really an adoptive uncle to me, which in Native culture is a big deal. So that was sort of my bringing. And then once I learned there was such a thing as Native American theater, it really changed the whole trajectory of my life, because I felt like where I was maybe on the outs in some ways in normative theater, I don't know what else to call it, in mainstream theater, I really had a place in a community and a voice in Indigenous theater making, and was so lucky to find Native voices at the Autry, and have another uncle in Randy Reinholtz while I was still forming my own voice as a director and a dramaturg. So that's how I got into theater.
Thank you, Courtney. I love that. Hene Gigama was one of the first Native theater books I got my hands on. He had written this amazing book that talked about theater being ceremony. And I kind of want to go into that direction right now, if you don't mind. I love talking about how Native theater differs from the Westernized canon. And I always jokingly say this is, we're different, but that's what I love about our theater and our way of storytelling. Would you like to talk about how we differ from the Westernized canon and why Native storytelling is so important?
Jenny, you go, Jennifer.
No, you can start, really. It's okay.
Okay. I like to share. Well, I always want to start by saying that we're humans, and so these are human stories. And I think that's like a funny thing, because there's a lot of really key differences that make, I think, Native theater incredibly important and aesthetically unique, and all of the things that make me want to implore theater companies to make more of it, because I really feel like any person would want to see what we have to offer and the stories we have to tell. But these are human stories, and so theater companies should want to make them, because humans are the ones that like to go to theater. Aesthetically, I think that the purpose of Native storytelling, and particularly when we're talking about theater as ceremony, is different than, I think, Western theater making. We are attempting to pull back into our traditional past, and also, like we always have done, be dynamic into like the moment that we're in and speak to the people that we're in order to create community. And that's like a very different goal than a lot of theater, which is about kind of articulating an individual's point of view or perspective virtuosically. And so I think that ends up informing all kinds of structural and aesthetic choices that are super rich theatrically, because you are attempting to bring everybody who's in the theater into an experience of understanding the story that maybe would not be heard in any other medium. And there's like a fluidity in terms of genre, and you can have spirits in different times, and animal spirits can show up, and ancestors frequently do, and time can kind of fold in on itself in a way that Western theater goers might think is like postmodern or something, but actually it's just a way of really getting to the truth of the world that we live in and the experiences that Indigenous people like live and breathe and know every day, which just makes for like a different kind of theater. I mean, that's what draws me to it. I love the fact that it's poetic and there's sometimes song and there's always rhythm and there's frequently like characters that are like appearing in different, realities, I guess, in a mythic space and in like a corporal space at the same time. To me, that is just like the truthiest of the true. And I feel like a lot of times that is not, that kind of experience with reality is left out of other kinds of theater.
It was great that you went first, because I totally see it a totally different way. Like for me, I never really thought about it as a ceremony, and the talk that you did yesterday, DeLanna, you and Jason, like it kind of started making me think about that. But for me, it was like the storytelling part of it is just that we're regular people, and so just telling those stories that, hey, I like to use the example of Dylan Chitto's bingo hall, because it's like you're just going to bingo, and I like that story because it has older women in it, and a lot of stories don't. They're not the central characters because you still have the kids, but you're introducing people, you're bringing people into community, regardless of if they get the jokes or not. They're still going to laugh. It doesn't quite make them as uncomfortable as some, as some other stories. When you do share a story, they're like, can I laugh? Am I allowed to laugh? There's that uncomfortableness. And so for me, it's just, and maybe that is ceremony, just bringing people in and welcoming them into my life, and not thinking that just because I'm Native, I'm different, because that's kind of why I started writing plays, because there was a moment when I was explaining, well, this is what I did when I was a kid. And I'm like, well, didn't you do that? It was like things that you did every day. Like, no, other day, we go and give our offerings at the beach to my dead ancestors. We burn some sweetgrass. We bring them their meal. And I was like, doesn't everybody do that? And the kids at school were like, Jen, you're weird, So, but just creating those stories so that there's not that Jen, you're weird moment.
No, I love that. I love that you both talked about the humanity of it, and also seeing Native people as regular people. I feel that's always been a barrier that's been placed in front of us, is when, you look at media, you look at the Hollywood landscape, we're usually in the past. We're usually, in buckskin and teepees. And, I was talking about this yesterday on another panel, but I love referring to those old John Ford movies, because you see all these Native men running around everywhere. And then when you get to the village, you only see two women. You see the princess and you see the grandmother. And my question is, where are your women? Because those two women did not create all those men. So where are they? And, the truth is, a lot of our communities are matrilineal, and we hold our women in high esteem. And the fact that, Jennifer referenced Bingo Hall by Dylan Chitto, yes, we revere our elderly women, our women elders, our beloved women. And I feel like that's what's been lacking for a long time, is that Indigenous female voice. And I feel in the theater world, we're finally making ground with that. We have Jennifer Bobiwash, we have Mary Catherine Nagel, we have Larissa Fasthorse, we have so many Native women playwrights out there. And I'm actually seeing more Native playwrights than I am male Native playwrights, which is exciting. But I would love to talk about this often overlooked part of our shared American history, which is this Indigenous female voice. And
Maybe,
so I guess,
and as you were just saying all of that, I think a lot of it has to do with like the life in general, like how we as women aren't allowed to speak, or you weren't allowed to do all these things. So when you're talking about John Ford movies, you're like, well, no, men made the movies, and that's, who cares if women go watch it for the men? You're still not going to be in it. wow, that tangent took me somewhere. Sorry.
Well, I love it. That's why I love these. I like to have these as conversations and not necessarily Q&As. So I love to go out on those tangents with you if you want to bring us along, Jennifer.
No, I was trying to bring myself back to the conversation. I was like, where was
Okay.
I going? But Courtney, I see you popped on. Maybe you want to help me out?
I just want to be able to laugh in time with your adorableness. I think like women are the culture bearers, and I mean, I hate to say all because I feel like you never want to say all. There's like over 500 distinct tribal groups in the country, and there were most likely more, right, before colonialism. But like many different peoples, indigenous peoples throughout the world are matriarchal or matrifocal, and women are the culture bearers, right? And so it's funny, like when my co-authors and I were sitting down to write the critical companion in Native American theater, we didn't set out to specifically concentrate on a bunch of female Native artists. But what we ended up discovering as we researched the decades from like 1910s until whatever, 1920 through 2020, it was women that were dominating the storytelling and taking those risks even early on. And of course, we had really important central male Native playwrights. But now you're hearing my dog in the background. Why do you have to be eating right now? Sorry. But so many of the people who are making the stories right now are women. And we had to sit and like kind of grapple with that, because as we looked at like our artist statements that we were able to ask, folks to contribute to the book, the vast majority were by women artists. And it actually just kind of resonated with the fact that like, this is how it's been. It's always been like this. Women have always been the ones that have been so important to passing on the oral history of the community. And so it's perfect that now they're using a typewriter, or they're using a computer or a paper and pen and writing out stories that meet this moment for the people now.
No, thank you. It's very exciting. I have to say, when I first came to Native Voices, the very first play that they did on the stage, I believe, they did Marie Clement's Urban Tattoo, and then they did Diane Glancy's Jump Kiss. And it was the first time for me, I take it back. The first time I saw a Native person on television that was a modern day Native person was Sheila Tousey in Thunderheart. But the first time I saw a Native woman on stage was at Native Voices. And the first time I saw a Native playwright on stage was at Native Voices. And, I give everyone a little bit about my background. Is I didn't start off as a playwright. I started off as an actor. And it was through Native Voices that I found my voice to be a playwright. And it was also through my frustration with Hollywood and waiting for someone to write a part for me without sacrificing my gender or my culture. And so that's one of the reasons why I started. And so I have to, there's all these challenges, I think, to being a Native woman in the industry, especially a Native actor, Native director, Native playwright, Native dramaturg. I feel like Native women in the arts were present, but there's been so many challenges to overcome. Do you mind sharing about what you've had to go through to get your success?
I've come from the standpoint, I worked for a production company early on in my career, and it was like at the advent of web series before everybody and their brother had a web series. And it was, you can create your own stuff. So for me, I don't really think of like barriers. And I think that's why I don't write screenplays, because I'm like, that's a lot of money. I'm like, theater, you can just like rent a place out. Like it seems cheaper and you can go and do it yourself. So for me, I'm like, just write something and like put it up, there shouldn't be that fear. Like it's same thing with your camera, and you can still do all of that as well now. But so yeah, I've never thought about it as a barrier, and maybe it's just how I was raised. It's like, whatever you want to do, Jen, just go do it. So what, when people are like, you can't do that, you're like, why? You know, if I have to raise my money myself, if I have to do this all myself, I will. So that's why I encourage people. I'm like, just do it. You know, when I started my YouTube channel, I'm like, nobody's watching me, so who cares? Let's just put it up there. You know, so you just have to have fun and not worry about it, because these are your stories and you want to tell them.
I love that. I love your optimism and your perspective. And obviously everybody's hustling, especially in Hollywood, especially in the film medium. Absolutely. And theater can and should be liberatory, right? And it should be inventive and risky and all of those things. But I do think that what I've noticed is that at least until very recently, a lot of theater companies seem to be like pretty nervous about how they would cast a Native play. And I think that's like what you hear. And I have the opportunity, I'm not myself a playwright like these two wonderful women, but I'm a very serious dramaturg and a director and love it and take it seriously. And like what I've noticed when I work with Native playwrights is that they can write the best play in the world and feel like it's just going to end up in a bin like the second that somebody opens it and sees there's Native American characters. And I don't think it's because people reading the scripts don't think the stories are good or don't think that they're worth telling. I actually think is that they're scared they're going to do it wrong and end up looking racist or end up looking insensitive or culturally appropriative. And there's this real fear, like, I don't know anybody who's Native in my circle of the actors that we work with that are good enough. And I guess that's like the barrier that I've found. You know, even as a director at my university, like I know that there's playwrights that would love for me to workshop their plays, even though we don't have Native actors in our student body. But I feel like there would be some pushback, probably from very concerned white people mostly, that we were doing something wrong, even if it was in service of developing the play for a full production elsewhere. And that concerns me because I feel like you're really missing the whole point of all of this, which is like, what is it that we're doing? We're trying to get stories visible. We're trying to connect with people like across and between cultures in ways that are dramatically enthralling. And so we need to take risks. We need to like prioritize. If you're a professional theater company and you're out there watching right now, like prioritize, put your money on getting housing and casting, you know, a couple of people from LA, wherever you are, house them and put on an excellent show that requires a couple of Native actors. Your audiences want to hear these stories. No, but DeLanna, I want to hear about like because you're a brilliant actor and like, you know, never got to play Juliet. So I want to hear about that.
Oh no, I'm still waiting for that chance to audition for a non-native role, but it will happen. Maybe when I'm like older. But yeah, it's, you know, it's just one of those situations. I feel like the biggest obstacle for me is that I would only get called in for auditions when they were having native roles, and that really kind of limited me to what I could audition for. Because when you open up all the other roles where I can just be a human being, I have more opportunity. And so to all the theater companies out there, I would also like to add, you don't have to cast a Native actor when you're only doing a Native play. They are very adaptable and they're very talented. And if you can't find them, use Native voices as a resource. We have a beautiful, huge index of Native actors across the country. And we also work with different theaters across the country. So we can find somebody in your region. But in regards to all of our Native talent, if you're a playwright or a designer, you can use us to do plays that aren't Native centric. We're able to do the other things if you allow us to do it. And I love that you talked about a lot of theaters not wanting to make the mistake. Well, truthfully, every theater has already made that mistake with another group, right? It's like they're not going to get it perfect the first time. And you learn from that mistake, you apologize, and you move forward, and you involve the community in how to make it better. And that's what you do with us. You know, we want the opportunity. I love to impress upon people that we're human beings first, and when you look at us as that human story, it demystifies all the scary things that people think is going to be involved in making Native theater. And I know a lot of not Native theaters, I know a lot of non-Native theaters who are worried about doing Native plays because A, they can't find the talent. B, they're worried about who's going to pay for those tickets, or because only Native people are going to want to see Native plays. That's what they think. And we discovered over and over again that no, people want to hear new stories. They want to hear authentic stories. And so I always like to encourage people to really, take that step and, use the Native people that your community, as that resource to help guide you along. And yes, you're going to make a mistake, but you keep going. You apologize and you try again.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bethany Hughes, my friend and collaborator, who is also kind of a Native scholar and has spoken on panels like this before with DeLanna and I. She said it once, and so I just want to quote her that you're not going to be able to do the perfect thing. Like, life and art is often about trade-offs. So do a good thing, be able to defend it, do it the best you can, and be brave in your art making. And that might mean that if you truly do everything you can to cast a Native play and there's 8 actors and one of them is Filipina out of the 8 characters, that really shouldn't be a reason to not do the play and to not be proud of the play. If you've really done your work and you've cast locally and you've cast a wide net and you've put your money into getting the people that you need, and one of the actors maybe, isn't Native, I would say that while somebody might be offended, that's possible, that the play is probably still worth doing. Because think about those 7 actors that are Native that just got to tell that story, and the playwright whose voice and the audience who got to experience that. So I think that the idea, nobody in theater, I feel like people in theater understand that we're not aiming for perfection. We're not ever, I think theater people are complex enough to get that the goal is to do something really great as best as you can. And some people are going to like it and some people aren't. And I feel like everyone understands that, except for when it comes to telling stories from historically excluded groups. And that ends up meaning that those stories don't get told. And that's a problem.
No. And, I think, I just want to jump on that. And I know Jennifer has some opinions she wants to share, but I want to jump on that. If that happens, if you have to cast somebody that is non-Native, then own the fact that you're casting a non-Native. Don't encourage them to lie about their ethnicity, right? And I find that in Hollywood, especially, a lot of people are pushed into lying and say, no, her great someone down the line was usually Cherokee. That's an inside joke for those of you out there, but usually they are. That's what they say anyway. And so a lot of people they feel like they need to lie in order to get the part. I audition for attorneys all the time. I'm not an attorney. But I'm not going to lie and say that I am, it's one of those situations where if you do it, own it, and just, don't try to hide it, and don't try to validate it. Just say, this is what's happening. We're doing it because we want to showcase this person, this playwright. We cast these actors, and, we cast this one person, but I feel like you have to own it and not try to cover it up or pretend like it didn't happen. And, and there will be backlash, but you have to learn how to deal with the community.
When you said you audition or you auditioned for lawyers, I was like, why are you auditioning for lawyers? But you meant to play the role. I'm good now. I was just thinking of in those times of Zoom, I've been working with Perseverance in Alaska, and they've been doing a lot of online stuff. And a lot of their things they're reaching out to community and reaching out to those storytellers. These are, people who know the stories, who know the language. So I think all the faces I was making, I think it's important when you workshop it that you have to reach out to that community, that specific community, because it's I could go and I'm helping some people this weekend and they're Tohono O'odham. And I'm like, I will go read, but that's all, I will read the play so you can hear it. But I don't know what I can offer to you any more than that. I can put you in contact with people, and the playwright is non-native, lived in that community. So she knows people, but as far as offering any like ceremonial advice or anything like that, that for me would be difficult, and I would feel uncomfortable doing it. But I do totally agree that when you have a large cast of people, like, what are you going to do? It is difficult, but I think DeLanna said it well. Like, you have to, like, don't hide the fact that this person isn't native. And like for me as a playwright, I'm like, that was one of the other things that was frightening to me, was like the Indian community, because they will, like, I've had those personal attacks, and it's a scary place to be. So you're like, do I really want to write this play? Like, what if I do it wrong? And what, so, and those are fears for real fears for some people. So, but you just have to keep going. Like, just go.
I love that. I love that, you talked about how we need to use that tribal community as your primary resource. I feel so many people go to history books and go to Wikipedia and just do the research online and not really go visit the people. And the truth is that community is the best resource you will ever have. And so, even whenever I was working on my play, which is about my people, I still went to my community because, like Jennifer said, oftentimes when we're hired, they expect us to be the ambassador of all things Native. And I'm not the expert on all things Cherokee. I'm the expert on my own experience, and I can share that with you, but I'm not the expert of of overall Cherokee people. And so I feel that's another little pigeonhole that non-Native theaters put us in, is the fact that when they hire you, they think we're getting an actor, but we're also getting a cultural consultant, and they're going to show us how to do the ceremony, and they're going to do this. And the truth is, no, that's not. If you want that, you can hire that, and we will help put you in contact with people from the tribe so you can have your consultant. But it's too much to put that on one actor. And so thank you, Jen, for bringing that up.
I think it's interesting because this happens really a lot in dramaturgy as well as it happens in acting. Like, a person I'll be so fortunate to be put with a Blackfeet playwright, and there might be research that needs to be done in order for the story to be told. And for me, it may be that the audience is like, oh, she identifies as Native, so we trust what she's saying. But I'm probably almost as new to Blackfeet culture as they are, right? And so from my point of view, I'm like working my tail end off to, talk to people from the tribe, help make the story more clear, all the things that you have to do as a dramaturg, no matter what the play is, but also kind of like dive deeply into a culture that is totally different. Like, there's really different in Montana than it is in Southern California. Like, it's a totally different everything. And so I also think that there's, like, right now I've noticed, especially during COVID, and it's been so exciting, that there's theater companies that are like, yes, BIPOC plays, like, wow, we've never produced ever even one story by an Indigenous writer. That sucks. Everything's on Zoom anyway. Now would be a great time to develop a play by an Indigenous playwright. Like, not to use this expression, but like, it's not going to be in trouble for us. No skin off our back, right? And so I'm like, that's awesome, but are you going to make it happen for realsies? Like, is it just going to be this thing that happens during COVID over Zoom, very low hanging fruit? Or are you actually going to develop this play for production? And I've been so happy to be involved with all these different kind of dramaturgical, experiences this way. I want to see those plays made, for realsies. But sorry, I kind of got off topic there for a second. But what I was going to say is that a lot of times a company will be like, who's a Native dramaturg? There's like 3. Oh, you know everything about being Native American. You can do this Pueblo play. And I'm like, I can do it, but it's because I'm a good dramaturg. Has nothing to do, I'm not Pueblo. So like, if it makes you feel better, like, that's cool. But honestly, like, I'm going to be doing this work because I'm a dramaturg. I might be a little bit more sensitive to it. But like, Pueblo is a different culture than Chumash. So like,
So let's just be honest about that. I hope I know some of the right questions to ask. I certainly understand like a little bit more about general pan-tribal protocol, but that doesn't always resonate with every individual playwright, right? General tribal, pan-tribal protocol might work at Native Voices, which is a pan-tribal community and like theater company, but it doesn't necessarily work in like a specific tribal storytelling circumstance.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, that was one of the, I guess that's, if there's a silver lining to what's happening, is that we have access now, right? We have access to Zoom. As Jennifer was saying, we can hire Native actors, playwrights, directors from across the globe, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone we want to work with, geography is no longer an issue. And it's been very cost effective for a lot of theater companies to really invest in that. But now that the world is starting to reopen, I would love to see, like you were saying, Courtney, put their money where the mouth is. Like bring in, fly in our people like you would do any other piece. I've worked at theaters where, they would fly in the people of color because it was a community that didn't have people of color.
Yeah.
And they didn't bat an eye about it. It was actually in their budget. And so, I'm just want to encourage people to actually do that, other theater companies. And so, but
and I think, this is the whole thing about this new move toward anti-racist theater practice or anti-racism in like the cultural zeitgeist or DEI work being, I guess, normalized, is that what that means is to prioritize people who have normally been excluded. And that might actually mean that instead of doing 4 shows, you're doing 3. Because you are prioritizing bringing in people of color that you do not, that you need to bring in from LA or from New York or wherever. And I think that like that can be a hard pill for, I guess, maybe like a board of funders or something to swallow. But that's what prioritizing means. Like, that's what it means. It means like you only have so much money and you decide that you're going to do this thing with that money. And so I just like, I know that people know it, but I feel like, what if you approached your board of directors or whatever with that line? Like, no, this is what prioritizing means. We're doing a Native play. We're going to house, and like room and board 5 Native actors to do it. We're going to have a remote Native dramaturg. We're going to do these things. And that means that we can't do this other play. And that's okay. That's what it means.
No, it's true. It's quality over quantity. And I feel like for Native people, that's something that we've always, that's who we are. Wealth isn't what we accumulate, it's what we give. And I feel there's been this commercialization of art where it's more about how many butts we get in the seats and not really about what shows we're showing. Right. And so, and I love that. I love that about Native theater is that, we're breaking stereotypes when we do it, but also we're giving people a different, a different story, a different taste of what's out there and not the same old things that we're being force-fed through television and media.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you're going to find all the time people who are like, I see it in the classroom a lot, like more than I care to think about. Like, oh, I never have met a Native person, or I thought you were, they don't necessarily, I thought you were all dead, And so there's a lot of room for storytelling to happen and to resonate, I feel like, when like the baseline is that ignorant.
No, it's true. And I want to point out for everyone that's watching, when Courtney said that, it's an outlandish thing to think that people are saying that you're extinct or that you're all dead. But I want you to notice that everyone in these little boxes, we all nodded because that's something that happens on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just letting you know, we all nodded, which is sad. But at the same time, I'm glad that other people can relate to my story.
Yeah.
I'm not so alone anymore.
No. And you never were alone. No.
I want to kind of jump on that wagon though too for when we're talking about Zoom. I think there's also been a lot more community that could see it now as well. Before at Native Voices, if we had a show a lot of people, the playwrights are usually brought in, and not a lot of their family could watch it. So these past 2 years, I feel so grateful for that we brought in all of these other communities. Other people are like, hey, yeah, I can write, because, in the US alone, what there are over 570, recognized tribes. So think of all of the stories that can come out of there. So, and because we're all storytellers, you've all grown up with all of those stories. And imagine even if just one person from each of those communities wrote something, how big the theater world could be out there, even if it's just a 10-minute play. I'm a big fan of 10-minute plays right now. So you're like, yeah, just start there. I say this because I do the social media for Native Voices, and I'm trying to encourage playwrights. So that is my pitch to people out there. Just start writing. Like we have the short play festival coming up. It's fun. Just do it.
Every year I'm like, this year I'm gonna write a play, and then I do not.
Well, hopefully this year you will. But I want to jump on what Jennifer said. That was probably one of the highlights of my life, to be honest, is being able to do the short play festival virtual, because for a lot of our actors and our playwrights, it's the first time their family got to see their work, because a lot of tribes are giving out technology stipends so we can keep our elders safe. And I know for my family didn't have the internet until I went out during COVID, and I quarantined and sheltered in space with them. But it was the first time my parents saw the short play festival, and they don't really know how to use a computer, and we did the audience award. So my parents brought me, they had their little ballots written out, and they brought it to me in the room and said, here's our votes. But that's how they did it. They didn't know how to actually use the computer. They actually brought it to me to say, can you tabulate these? But one of the great things about that was just the chat, the Zoom chat that was happening at the time of the short play festival, just seeing the grandmas, and also the intergenerational communication, because a lot of it was from, like the grandchild was like, I'm typing this for my grandma, da, 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 da. And then someone's like, oh my gosh, my grandma just said that too, or my grandpa did, or uncle said that. And there was these amazing conversations between, our different Indigenous communities from across the US, having these amazing conversations regarding the plays. And that's, once again, that's something that wouldn't have happened in the live theater. We don't really encourage, that crosstalk during a show, but I love that it was happening during the chat. And so, yeah, I feel like, there's been some ups and downs with what's happening, but at the same time, we were able to reach a lot of people in our own communities that didn't have access. And we were also able to reach a lot of theaters that wouldn't even think about doing a Native play. And I have to say, one of the biggest wins for Native Voices this year was our short play festival. We showcased 9 playwrights, and we got a total of 7 commissions out of that, which was incredible. And also, going back to what Jennifer was talking about, because we're able to do this and these communities are able to see themselves now, I think that's a huge win for us. And, there's been so many wins lately, like Rutherford Falls, which Jennifer's been on, Reservation Dogs, contemporary Native stories told by Native people that shows us as a thriving contemporary group of people, which is very exciting. And so, I hope that we are adding to that, and we are helping to tell those stories. So, I don't feel alone, and they don't feel alone. And so, what are some wins for you? Like, what is happening now that when you started, you thought would never happen?
I love what you were saying about streaming and it really having an impact on what youth are seeing in particular, so that they're not just seeing stereotypes. When my dad was growing up, he'd watch cowboy and Indian shows. They were very popular in the 50s. And I think he really identified with the Cowboys, and that's sad, because they won. And I feel like that's really all that was available. And so it's really nice to imagine, like you said, that your parents are sitting and watching the shows for the first time through their computers, and the ideas that we've got, Native kids that are thinking about what they want to do with their lives, and they're actually seeing like representation and the possibility of them going out and maybe telling stories professionally and through acting or playwriting or screenwriting. I love that. I love that idea. It has been really great. I'm an academic, and so a lot of my job has just sort of been plugging away at making Native theater visible within the college kind of environment, within the academy, through professional organizations and writing. And I think there has been a turning point. Like, people understand that they should be teaching Native plays in theater programs. That means that kids of all different backgrounds are actually learning and reading our stories. Like, that is extremely exciting to me. It used to be the Hene and the Native American Theater Ensemble was like 2 or 3 lines in an entire theater history book. And now there's classes all over the place popping up that are focusing on our plays. And that's extremely exciting to me, because it means that we're growing audiences, thoughtful theater consuming audiences, and people who are going to go and make theater or make choices and like where their money goes to make theater, that are going to demand seeing Native stories told. And so I guess, I don't know that that's my win, but I feel like it's a win that will benefit the Native theater community, and therefore everybody. Jennifer, what are your wins?
For me, I think it's quiet down, so I'm good. For me, it was a win. I was a last minute replacement at one of the playwright festivals, Native Voices, and I got to workshop my one-person show, and presenting it. It was at La Jolla. We did a reading of it, and just these old elderly gentlemen came and told me how they related to one of my characters, and I had never thought about it like that. And so for me, like, when I was the play is about just me being a regular person, and this is just what I do. And so the fact that these 80-year-old men could relate with my tiny little 8-year-old character, I was like, that's freaking amazing. Like, and because I didn't see those connections in it. And because I'm like, I'm not that deep. I'm just writing stuff. I don't know. And it also made me realize, it kind of gave me some freedom as well, though, because I'm worried. I'm worried that I'm misrepresenting my community. You know, I could go talk to people, but this auntie's going to say one thing and this auntie's going to say another. So, you know, but in that same reading, it also made me realize that the audience, they're coming in with their own stuff, and they're going to see it however they want to, you know? So like, I had this big vision for it. I'm like, they might see it or they might not, they might have had a bad day, you know, or something. And so for me, like, that freed me up even more, okay, you've written the play now, Jennifer. Now you have to submit it somewhere. Because, you know, like, you could have a stack of plays, but, you know, I think for me, that was a really big win. And I kind of want to, when you were saying about being seen on TV, I think with all of the streaming that has been happening, I mean, not just with Native Voices, but like every Native theater company has been doing something across the country. And I think that's amazing when you can see yourself. Because for me as a child, I never really thought about it. I'm Canadian, so when I saw Jessie from the Beachcombers, you know, or Tantu Cardinal and something like that, like, I was like, wow, you know, look at that. But I never thought of it as seeing me on television. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of sad in its own respect as well. But I mean, it could also be that I was just like, well, no, you just go and do it. You know, like, why is that different? She's an actor. That's her job. So yeah, but that was my big win, I think.
That's what is the name of your show, Jennifer?
There is no I in Indian.
I love that. No, thank you. And I know we're closing in on time, and I thought I was supposed to probably open this up to questions from the people that are watching. So if anyone out there has any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, and if I see one, I'll share it with the group. But while we're waiting on that, I would also like to say, I would like to actually ask you what's next for you guys. What's coming up? What can we look for? How can we support you? And how can we support Native theater and Native artists?
I'm working with a theater company in Boston right now on a devised play. So that should be fun. And we're doing everything over Zoom right now. But if you're in the Boston area, that will be coming very soon. And that for me is fun because when we were in person and the ensemble was doing stuff together, just that experience of getting us writing in a group, getting our actors just doing stuff and getting their juices flowing as well. But yeah, so I have that, and then I'm doing acting stuff, so that will be out soon as well. So
Congratulations. And you'll have to let us know if we want to follow you, Jennifer. How would we do that?
You just want it in the chat? What do you want?
Yeah, you can put it in the chat, but you can also announce it out,
Anything is just Bobiwash. It's just my last name. That's where I post everything. And I try and be generous with my news and post it all over the place. And I, as well as you have to check out Native Voices, because whenever we have playwrights, any of our playwrights that have come through the system, I try and share their stuff. So if it's not necessarily on Zoom, if it's close to you, please do go support them as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. Courtney?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky to be able to kind of give some notes and do some dramaturgical support for Beth Piatote, who's a Paiute playwright. I'm just wondering. No, she's Nez Perce. I'm so sorry. She's Nez Perce. And she's writing a play, an adaptation of Antigone that's like very interesting. And that has been a great pleasure. I will be directing. I don't know what. I'm really interested in figuring that out at Butler, where I teach in the spring. I'm so excited to do it. And I also am doing I'm doing dramaturgy for the Virginia Stage Company's production of Larissa Fasthorse's Thanksgiving play. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity. Again, Zoom has been awesome. I've been able to meet with all of the production staff and the design staff via Zoom and have an initial conversation with them. And we'll be able to do quite a bit of things remotely, which is really fantastic. And I'm hopeful that I'll get to come and see the premiere of that show. But how can you help me? I guess I wrote this book with a couple of wonderful co-authors, Christy Stanlake and JT Darby. It's called Critical Companion to Native American and First Nations Theater and Performance in Indigenous Spaces. And I don't know that, I don't make any money off of it, but I love the idea that people maybe read it and learn something and get turned on to new playwrights. So that's how you can help yourself. You can join the Autry, and you can support Native Voices at the Autry, and you can tell whatever theater companies are local to you that they must tell Indigenous stories. And if you are looking for an awesome dramaturg or director that can work on any play, then you can hit me up.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. As Jennifer mentioned, we're Native Voices. We're going to be doing a call for our short play festival this year. It's called Trickster. So if you are a Native playwright and want to submit, please do. If you are an actor, we'll be calling for auditions. While we do try to cast as many Native actors as possible, you will also find that a lot of our plays are very diverse. So we're always looking for actors, period. We're trying to practice what we preach. But at the same time, as Jennifer mentioned, follow Native Voices. We always share what other Native theaters are doing. And so hopefully you can find one in your area. I think we have about 7 minutes left. So before we go, is there any advice that you would like to give to non-Native theaters out there about Native artists in general? Any advice or even a demand or challenge?
I think it's just a challenge is just to, to look at a Native play. Like, it would be fine to be like, yes, do one like that. That's a big challenge. But if you have no concept of what even you're looking at, that might be a challenge of itself. Like we were talking earlier, just actors, and it's too overwhelming. But just have a conversation, commission a playwright. to do something, and that way you can workshop it, and you can see how it goes. There, that's my challenge. Go there, commission a native playwright. We know a lot. Contact Native Voices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can I just say ditto? That's what you ought to do. And contact Native Voices. Like we have lots of talent and we have lots of resources. Like, DeLanna is an incredible resource. She knows everybody. She can help you cast. If you don't want to cast her, you should try to cast her. If you can get her. Because there's really like the excuses are kind of at this point, like they're not the greatest. So, just reach out. That's like part of, we want to be in community and telling our stories. So
I think we've brought up a lot of answers to challenges, or like challenges theater companies may have had. You're like, nope, watch this video. We got the answer. We got it. Meeting of the minds. There, we got it.
This will be your tutorial on how to produce a native play.
It's just like, do the brave thing. Like, do the brave thing. There's no such thing as a perfect thing in art making. You already know that. So do the bravest thing. And the bravest thing is if you've not ever produced an Indigenous play, like that is a big problem. So figure out what you need to how you need to rearrange your priorities so that you can make that happen the best way that you can. That's what I have to say.
Thank you both. And, I would like to challenge you to look at the structure of your theater and just examine how many Native people have been there in the history of your theater, both on stage and off stage. What is that number? I love that we're now BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color instead of people of color. But for a lot of theaters out there, your eye is still invisible. And I really want you to I want to challenge yourself to do that hard work of looking at your own numbers and find out how many people you're serving and how you can change that. And how many people are you hiring in all capacities, and not just necessarily as an artist, but have you looked at your arts administrators? It's like, are you checking out Native people for all parts of the theater? Because we do have professionals everywhere. And, the other challenge to that is, if you're only calling in Native people when you're doing a Native play, and most theaters aren't doing a Native play, you're not calling in Native people. So you can't really call yourself a BIPOC theater if you're not including that I. And there are so many different communities out there that will help you figure out how to involve the Indigenous community. And so that's my challenge. But I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but I just want to acknowledge that I am so grateful to be in this space with both Jennifer and Courtney. These are some fantastic, fierce women that you should be following, and you should find out what they're doing. And if you ever need a playwright, a dramaturg, a director, an actor, these are some women to check out. And if you are needing other women, there are more than 3 of us, I promise you. There's so many voices out there that we will happily connect you with. If you think that we're amazing, just imagine what the rest of the community is like. And I'm assuming you're thinking we're amazing. I hope so. But if we're not, imagine how amazing they are. But I just want to acknowledge that we are, we're 3 people, but there are so many more talented, fierce females out there that happen to be Indigenous, and we will put you in contact with them as well. And so I just want to acknowledge and, uplift all the people that have made it possible for us to be here. Courtney mentioned Hane Gigama, but we are literally standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. And hopefully the next generation will be even more than we can ever imagine. So thank you all. Do you have any closing comments before we head out?
I do. I thought of one thing. The Writers Guild of America, their Native American community, they just released a statement about writing for, so you wrote a Native character. And so it's a wonderful piece. And, it describes everything. They're like, it breaks down definitions and just like, if you don't, what's a First Nation, what's Indigenous, and how, and how you should approach that character. I think that's a really helpful resource when you want to do that, when you're wondering about what you're doing wrong or how you should do it right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anything from you, Courtney?
No, I think theater people are the greatest people in the world. I'm totally in this cult that is theater making. And so we have a responsibility because of our incredible skills of empathy and compassion to change the things that are wrong with our society. So that's heavy, but I do think that whoever is streaming in or accessing this later, you have the capacity through art and creativity to make new worlds. And so Indigenous people have a lot of knowledge to depart in that, Indigenous women in particular. So you already know you have that creativity inside of you. This is the community that you belong to. So channel all that and do something really transformative with it.
Thank you. And if you're curious about Native playwrights, we just at Native Voices had our short play festival called Home, where we showcased 8 Native playwrights. And you can find more information and actually view these short plays if you go to the Native Voices website. So that would be at the autry.org/Native Voices, and you can view it for free. And I challenge you to do so you can learn about 8 amazing Native playwrights. So thank you all for your time. I love being in a space with you, and it does my heart good. And I cannot wait to our future conversations. And I would like to take this moment to say thank you to Jolla and Jolla Playhouse. Thank you for having us and letting us have this fun and frank conversation. So I appreciate that. So for all of you out there, Wado, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Kakinash.